The golden era of Call of Duty was a special time. For me, it spanned from 2007 to 2013, from the start of Call of Duty Modern Warfare to the end of Black Ops 2's DLC cycle. It contained the Modern Warfare and Black Ops series, battling it out every year for superiority, and each game at this time smashed it out the park. So get comfortable, grab some popcorn, and enjoy this Call of Duty Golden Era retrospective. In 2007, the FPS landscape looked quite a bit different. The most popular games seemed to follow the formula of arena shooters like Halo or World War shooters like Medal of Honor. The Call of Duty franchise itself at this time had been around for just a few years, and had played it safe with solid World War II games, all of which found relative success. But none of them really stood out in the busy shooter market. Infinity Ward were well known at this time for releasing Call of Duty, and probably the best game up until this point, Call of Duty 2. But now it was time for Call of Duty 4. And this is where everything would change, forever. The course of gaming history was about to be redirected, and the franchise was about to be defined for a generation. This was modern warfare. How do you go from World War II with MP40s, old school tanks and flamethrowers, to contemporary warfare with over half a century's worth of tactical and technological advancement? Well, that was the first hurdle for Call of Duty to overcome in this new direction. To say this game was a risk is certainly an understatement. We start as Soap McTavish, accompanied by Captain Price and Gaz, but you already know that by now. This is 2011, not the 1940s, and as world tensions begin to rise again, we're tasked with taking out the ultra-nationalist Russian forces led by one Imran Zakhaev and another man who's come to power in the east, al-Assad. This revolves around their increasing power and likelihood of nuclear warfare, which would certainly spell bad times for the West. Taking it back to the real world, and this game released in the midst of the Iraq and Afghanistan war. So to answer how we got from World War II to modern warfare, it's clear that Infinity Ward took clear inspiration from the wars happening during the development of this game. Back to the game though, and as we fight through some of my favourite missions in the original Modern Warfare trilogy, like Blackout and Charlie Don't Surf, the story splits into both the perspective of Soap, joined by the SAS, as they track down Zakhaev in and around Russia, and Paul Jackson alongside the Marines, who track down al-Assad in the Middle East. This constant switching of perspective gives us a scale of the ongoing war, but from a gameplay perspective, it gives us a mix of more stealthy tactical missions with Soap and Price, and more traditional action missions with the Marines. We continue to chase down the bad guys, but in retaliation, this happens.
Everyone hang on!
One of the most powerful scenes in gaming history. Things have gone nuclear, and the world is at war once again. Midway through the game, and we have the most iconic mission in this game, and perhaps of all time, all gillied up. Its placement in the middle of the game is perfect in order to give character development for both Price and Zakhaev, as we find out much more about their backstory. The idea of stealthily moving through the exclusion zone in Chernobyl is riveting, and it brings forth the real-world grounded feel this game was going for. As for the gameplay, and this mission takes its time, as you stealthily move through the grass and progress towards your sniper position. And what makes it so perfect is that it was one of the only missions to allow the player to do the whole mission in stealth. It ends with us sniping Zakhaev, but as we know, he is still out there. One man who isn't is al-Assad, who's been taken out by the Marines, but this has only seemed to increase the threat posed by Zakhaev. As we approach the final act, the story focuses its lens on Soap, Price, and the mission to stop nuclear warfare. We track down Victor Zakhaev, but he doesn't give us anything, instead doing this. This spells endgame once Imran finds out, and prepares us for the final 4 missions. The most intense section of the game, fighting through what seems to be like an infinite number of enemies until we finally reach the control room, and World War III is prevented. But Zakhaev is still out there. Or is he? And boom, just like that the game ends. A feeling of hope and uncertainty looms over us. But as the end credits roll, one thing is for sure. The Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare campaign has opened your eyes to contemporary warfare and is superb from start to finish. Before we get into the multiplayer, guys, I just wanted to say that if you missed the trailer, this is the start of something special we're building over this summer. Today we're looking at COD 4, but within just a few months, I will have retrospectively looked back on every single COD game. So if you, yes you, want to stay up to date with this series, make sure to subscribe and turn that damn bell on, because in 2 weeks' time, we're going to be looking into Call of Duty World at War, and I'm telling you, you don't want to miss out. But now, let's get into the multiplayer. This is where it all began. There were COD multiplayers before this, but everything that we would come to know about what a Call of Duty multiplayer is would be put forth in Modern Warfare. Classic class selection with a strong list of weapons, attachments, equipment, and a variety of perks and 3 perk slots to choose from. That was introduced in Modern Warfare. A prestige mode with 10 prestiges, all with their own unique prestige icon, rewards, and grind to reach. That was introduced in Modern Warfare. Kill streaks, such as a UAV, airstrike and helicopter. That was again introduced in Modern Warfare. Map design as we know it. That was, well, you get the idea by now, introduced in Modern Warfare. The list of things this game revolutionised, for not just this franchise, but the majority of FPS games in the next 17 years is untold. Even Call of Duty's closest rivals began to take inspiration from the success of some of the things that this game introduced. It's a tale as old as time that Modern Warfare was revolutionary, and everyone knows this by now. But it was even the little things, like being able to use modern guns and equipment in a modern setting that hadn't been done to this level before. But taking away all the history and importance of this game, what is Call of Duty 4 really like? Well, to put it simply, it's pure excellence. The class selection is at its most primitive here. Still a good selection of guns, but the attachments are certainly limited in retrospect. A weapon will tend to have a few attachments, but none that will make as big of a splash as in later games. The perks, on the other hand, are plentiful, with 7 in the first 2 slots and 8 in the last. They all have their different roles, and they really bring out that careful crafting of a class that we all love to get lost in. But that being said, that would be ignoring one big key thing here. Yes, all these perks have their own role, but slot 2, oh slot 2, it contains 2 perks, and I'm sure you know them. They are so powerful that they dictate every single combat scenario in this game. Say them with me now: Stopping Power and Juggernaut. The former increases your damage, whereas the latter increases your health.
What?
It becomes clear very quickly that if you want to do well, having Stopping Power is very useful in taking out players with Jug, and having Jug is very useful in stopping players with Stopping Power. This is a real shame, as the other perks in slot 2 should, and in theory are, very powerful, and it should create a real dilemma in which you choose. For example, Sleight of Hand has faster reload speed, or Double Tap has increased rate of fire. But in a game where fast time to kill is so prevalent, Stopping Power and Jug become necessary, and still to this day they reign supreme on the battlefield. And that isn't the only overpowered thing in COD 4, as again, still to this day, this game is home to one of, if not the most overpowered gun. Drumroll please, the M16. If you haven't played this game, you might be surprised that this gun, that appears in pretty much every modern Call of Duty game, was so powerful all the way back in COD 4. But let me explain. This gun already had incredible damage, but combine that with the previously mentioned Stopping Power, and you have a rifle that can eliminate anyone across the map with a simple burst. Is it a shame that COD 4 is quite unbalanced? Well, if you're looking to play seriously, then yes, it can be annoying, and I'm sure back in the game's heyday it was very annoying. But now, things like this are a relic of a foregone time. A time where a game wasn't patched every week, And these overpowered mechanics can be played in 2007, or they can be played in 2024. And they're the exact same, and there is something quite special about that. The gameplay loop in Call of Duty 4's multiplayer is a perfect blend of tactics and reaction times, which does help give it that gritty feeling it was going for in 2007. What about the map design though? To me, map design is the most important pillar of a good Call of Duty game, and has to work well with the mechanics. Whilst this game does have some duds, I'm looking at you Block and Wetwork, it has one of the most well-rounded selection of maps in the series that perfectly complements the gameplay. Smaller urban maps like Crash, Backlot and Vacant have all had remakes and are the perfect size for all types of gameplay to benefit. Maps like Countdown and Overgrown might not be everyone's go-to, but they provide brilliant long-range sniper gameplay and they flow well for that kind of style. There's underrated gems and personal favourites of mine like Pipeline and Crossfire, which are always a blast to play. Pipeline in particular is such an incredible map to me, and it really goes underappreciated when we're in the conversation of the best maps. And then how could we forget the birthplace of 1v1s, Shipment. A map that I'm sure we're all fed up of seeing now, but this version of Shipment was as close to perfection as you're going to get with a map like this. It certainly wasn't perfect. Grenade spam was pretty frustrating, but it had a flow to it that the newer versions just don't have. It may have been experimental at the time, and miles different to every other map in the game, but it shows that the developers took care in their map design, and would at least try and make it work. There's a reason we've seen it so many times since. A lot of the maps tried different power positions to fight for, but no matter what, there was always vulnerabilities in every position. The map layouts were not always your formulaic 3-lane maps, which gave this game a memorable selection with lots of differing gameplay. A third mode has become a staple of the Call of Duty franchise since COD 4, and whilst it's a shame this game didn't have one, it's not to say that it didn't come with a few extras to mess around with. The campaign contained an obstacle course in the training mission. A simple premise of shooting targets and running through as fast as you can. Players could try and improve on their time, beat Infinity Ward's best time, or battle against their friends to see who could be the best FNG. Another tough test came at the end of the game through the iconic level Mile High Club. One of the shortest but most challenging missions in Call of Duty history sees you fight for a damaged plane. The intense close quarters combat leaves no room for error, making this an extreme challenge on the higher difficulties, but one that players love to brag about in 2007. And the final unique charm this game had, that surprisingly hasn't returned in newer games, is cheats. No, I'm not talking about the hackeroonies, but instead fun additions to the campaign if you collect all the intel. They had that extra replayability and fun factor, and the overall cherry on top of a quite magnificent game. The impact of Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare is so vast that as we look around at the first-person shooter landscape in 2024, it's hard not to find a game influenced by Infinity Ward's creation. Obviously, Call of Duty still holds onto many of the things introduced, even if some have been lost. Battle Royale games like Apex Legends were made by some of those who worked on COD 4, and the newly releasing X-Defiant aims to introduce many of the things popularised by Modern Warfare that have been taken away in recent FPS games. This game led to a trilogy as well, which we'll get onto later on in this series. It was the only game in the franchise to be remastered fully, and as of late, the series was rebooted in an attempt to replicate the popularity they originally saw. It's hard to imagine a world without COD 4, with its stellar campaign and groundbreaking multiplayer, and it's for these reasons why I give it an 83 out of 100 score. It's a game that doesn't lack in any area, and whilst nowadays it might be weird to not have a third mode, it still contains a better campaign than most, with fan favourite characters, a multiplayer with a ton of content and creative map design, and finally, a charm that could only be found in a game developed with as much passion as Infinity Ward showed, and a game with a foregone time when gaming was in its prime. But I've been Ranger, and this has been how Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare changed the game. Let's rewind time. The year is 2008. Call of Duty had just hit new heights of Modern Warfare, and it was now on the map. But now it was Treyarch's turn, and as they say, the sequel was always harder to make than the original. This time it was back to basics, back to the franchise's roots, back to World War II. So grab an MP40 and some popcorn as we look at Call of Duty World at War and how Treyarch made the best World War II game. When you're making a World War II game, or a game about any war for that matter, there is one thing you have to get right: presenting and representing it in the most transparent way possible. And out of every World War II game that I've ever played, there is no game that explores the diverse, multifaceted, gritty and devastating horrors of war quite like World at War. Whether the game is showing you the different tactics and characteristics that made each army unique, the horrors of war that we sometimes shy away from, and things that aren't always in the rulebook, or how it portrays brutality, not just in some of the scenes we see, but in its harsh gameplay. From top to bottom, World at War doesn't take a second to shy away from war, and it's a constant reminder of what millions of people had to fight through almost a century ago. Speaking of portrayal, World at War is a game unlike some of the newer World War II games. They would have you believe that the war was simply USA versus Germany, but this game remembers the involvement of both Russia and Japan. The campaign gets underway in Japan as you play as Private C. Miller, deep in enemy territory, with seemingly no way out. Fortunately, we're rescued by our squadron, but quickly we learn that the Japanese don't have the same tactics as us. It's an iconic yet scary scene as we run up the hill, and all we hear is
Banzai!
Hold your ground!
Here they
Hold your
come!
ground!
you freeze all of a sudden as the Japanese soldiers jump from out of nowhere in a last-ditch attempt to take you out. We eventually make it out of this, but this mission tells us everything about how this game showcases war. It's dark, it's tough, and it isn't as simple as facing the enemy head on. The story quickly splits into two different perspectives. The one we just saw, with the US Marines pushing into enemy territory of the Imperial Japanese Army, and now, as we wake in the midst of a battlefield, amongst the blood and destruction left behind, and a man lay before us. A man who will do anything for his country. That man is Viktor Reznov. And so begins one of the best Call of Duty missions of all time, Vendetta. The name says it all. The Russians have a vendetta against the Axis. Yes, I will be calling them the Axis, as I don't know what YouTube will think if I say the other word. The game portrays the Russian army as desperate, a country that's been decimated by the Axis, and an army that will try and do anything to get a one-up on them. Reznov epitomises this to a T, and as he takes us on a journey throughout Stalingrad, sneaking through the streets, his determination to win back his land is brought to the forefront. He teaches us lessons in sniping, and it all culminates in taking out a high-ranking Axis general. That's not to say the mission is easy, as it's very oppressive in difficulty, and it's a constant reminder that you as the Russian army are at a disadvantage in this particular battle. As we progress through the story on the Soviet side, we see an increase in brutality and merciless nature from Reznov. He wants to inflict the same pain that he's felt throughout this war, but it completely blurs the lines of what's good and bad, and it brings in the question of morality in this war. On the Marine side of things, we progress through intense missions like Burn 'em Out as we go through trenches. The close quarters combat puts a magnifying glass over the gameplay and how powerful and realistic the guns feel. For a game that released in 2008, it had genre-defining realism and conveyed the sheer panic that would have been felt in these trenches. As the game approaches its finale, the Marines and Soviets make their final push. The Marines fight their way into Shuri Castle, fighting off the last and most skilled members of the Imperial Army, until finally capturing the last piece of land on Okinawa. The Soviets push towards the Reichstag, their army thinning in the most brutal of ways. But with the help of Reznov, Dmitri, who's been badly wounded, makes his way to the top to plant the flag in an act that would symbolise the end of World War II in Europe. On face value it seems heroic. It seems happy. But as the music sets in and as the credits begin to roll, you look back at both what the game has presented and what you already know about World War II, and you realise that the little victory at the end cannot make up for the horrors you've gone through. No matter what side, what allegiance, or what nation you see it from, this war has hurt them all, and the World at War campaign reminds you of that every second it has your attention. It doesn't end with you feeling uplifted and happy, but instead deep in thought, and with a respect for the millions that risk their lives for the future. As you already know by now, and I'll probably say it time and time again throughout this series, Call of Duty 4 changed the game with its multiplayer, so World at War already had a blueprint to go off. And essentially, as we look back at this game retrospectively, this game is basically Call of Duty 4 with a World War II skin over it. But that's not necessarily a bad thing, as these new features still felt fresh, and the World War II weapons, maps and overall vibes certainly made the two games feel different. In terms of the class selection, the same system is in play here, with your very basic 3 perk slot, equipment and weapons. The only differences being, obviously, that these were World War II guns like the M1 Garand, PPSH, etc. The kill streaks also follow the same 3-5-7 format as Modern Warfare, and whilst they were different to the ones in that game, the customization still hadn't been introduced yet. Perhaps the funniest similarity between COD 4 and World at War is that still to this day, both have an incredibly OP weapon present. We talked about the M16 last time out, but World at War has an equally annoying gun. The MP40. This thing is simply ridiculous. An SMG that can two-shot people from across the map. That's the MP40. Pair this thing with stopping power and it will pretty much guarantee you a two-shot. Or use Jug instead and you'll have more health with a gun that can take anyone in a split second. Is it annoying? Well, yes. But is it cool to have a piece of history from 2008 that's still intact to this day? Well, also yes. I said it before and I'll say it again, but when weekly patches and updates weren't a thing, weapons like this would dominate throughout the entire game's existence, and in turn they would end up becoming iconic. But okay, that's enough of the similarities between COD 4 and World at War. It's time we now talk about what makes this game stand out and so memorable despite its lack of innovation. The map design, and once again, the presentation. Playing some of these maps in 2024 takes you back to a different time. A time where the developers weren't as focused on making maps feel small and action-packed, but instead, they set out to make a range of maps that would accommodate every playstyle. Take maps like Silo or Outskirts, huge sprawling maps more akin to something seen in Battlefield. Whilst not perfect, these maps fit the bill for a more methodical playstyle, and where snipers could dominate. The inclusion of tanks also made these maps stand out. I don't think these maps could work in the modern games, but when paired with gamers like War, the larger maps in World at War had the potential to play well. Medium-sized maps like Macon or Hangar I find to be very underrated in both their gameplay and how they present the World War II setting. The best map in presenting the World War II setting though is definitely Airfield. Now this is a very odd map, with a design that's only really seen in this era of Call of Duty, with an extremely open battlefield. A map where I always felt like I was scrambling for cover, and it was able to convey a feeling of being in a war like no other map in this game. And of course, World at War comes with its standouts. The couple of maps that for me could play well in any COD game, and epitomise what good map design is in this franchise. Dome and Castle. Dome was the small map in this game, but it had a design that allowed for more varied gameplay than we saw the year before with Shipment. There was verticality on each side, and lines of sight where rifles and snipers could have more of a chance. But that didn't take away from its fast-paced nature, and it flowed great. Castle for me is one of the best maps in the entire series. It is the shining example of how to use power positions for map flow. This was a medium to large size map in a beautiful Japanese castle. I mean, what a contrast from some of the other gritty maps in the game, instantly making it iconic. The gameplay revolved around the tower that I'm sure everyone has spent time camping in. With a view over 2 open areas in the map, it was a great place to hunker down, but with everyone fighting for it, the spot just works so well. You could choose to attack it directly with a shotgun or SMG, running through the main building. Or maybe you would toss a grenade through the window. Or maybe you would choose the parallel window across the map, which was my particular choice in Sniper 1v1s. Ah, the good old times. I always say this word, and I'm sure it will come up again and again during this series, but variety is what makes a good selection. I don't think that this selection has the best gameplay and the most iconic maps, but it has maps that are gritty, that show different battles from World War II, and that favour different types of gameplay, making it feel constantly fresh. The World at War multiplayer is a slight step back from me from COD 4, but it's still very solid. Looking back, I do wish it took a couple more risks, but I think either way, we're left with a fun experience and certainly the most authentic war multiplayer in the series. I'm excited to finally cover COD Zombies on this channel, and what better way to start than the origins, no not that one, of this iconic mode. After finishing the campaign, the player is suddenly thrown into a mysterious bunker with zombies shambling towards it. Armed with just a pistol, you manage to fight off the first horde. That terrifying sound, signifying a new round is starting, plays for the first time, and you realise that this isn't the end. You grab a rifle from the wall, and you try and hunker down. Soon, you're overrun in the first room, so you open up your first door. But what's this? A box that costs 950 of those points that you've collected? So you decide to give it a spin, and boom! Look what you get eventually, this weird alien gun. I'm sure this will be useful. You get overrun again, and quickly make your way upstairs. An unknown power from the future tells you to not buy this door, but instead the other one, as you might get overrun. You hold down in the corner for as long as you can, but eventually you're overrun with zombies. The game ends, but you just cannot wait to play another match, and get even further and find more secrets. Your friend tells you the next day that he reached round 20, and suddenly, it motivates you to beat their high score. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a simple experience that Nactor and Totem was able to create, and with the most basic mechanics and a small bunker to hold up in, Treyarch was able to craft a mode that was instantly addictive, replayable, and had endless potential for fun. They wouldn't take long to expand on the idea, with a rook soon around the corner. It kept the same creepy atmosphere of the first map, and turned it up by 10. The scariest zombies map ever created was based on the Asylum multiplayer map, and the close quarters combat seemed even more difficult than Noct. But Treyarch knew this, so they decided to throw you a bone in the form of perks. The original 4, Quick Revive, Jug, Speed Cola and Double Tap were all here to give you boosts such as faster fire rate or faster reload, and could help you hold out for just that bit longer. It showed that zombies was here to stay, but Treyarch wasn't done there. Shi no Numa would release in the summer of 2009, and bring zombies to the swamps of Japan. A much more open map that would popularise the idea of training, and that saw random perk locations, keeping each match fresh. The Flogger Trap would become an icon, and players quickly realised that this map was the easiest to reach high rounds on, due to the zombie cap for each round, combined with the power of the trap. As of 2024, the legend Krups reached round 11,482, which is the highest I could find footage of on YouTube. By the time the release rolled around a few months later, this mode that may have seemed like an afterthought at first had become a phenomenon. But this map was the one to really change the direction of zombies moving forward. It was a slightly larger map that seemed to incorporate aspects of all the other maps. Perks were here, traps were here, and it had both good training spots and legendary camping spots. Everyone has been up here with a PPSH. The biggest innovation though was the introduction of Pack-a-Punch, and perhaps the most forgotten part, the mini quest to do it. By activating 3 teleport links to the mainframe, Pack-a-Punch could be unlocked, and as a result, every single gun could be upgraded. This was mind-blowing at the time, and it opened up so many new possibilities. In the space of a year, zombies had blossomed into an exciting third mode, and players could not wait to see if it would continue, given the little seeds of a story that Treyarch had began to plant. This mode almost didn't even make it into the final release, but I'm grateful that it did, because it sparked a brilliant mode and story, which created a community that cherished every piece of Zombies content going forward. I'm sure Zombies will have a big part to play going forward in this series. No matter what mode you play in World at War, it retains the same distinct feel of gritty, horrific war. Its campaign makes you respect war, and gives you important history on how brutal it really was. The multiplayer is methodical. It allows you to take in the different sounds and atmosphere of all the different battlefields, and it proved that the COD 4 blueprint could be used going forward. And finally, we had a new mode in the form of Zombies that was clearly here to stay, and its potential was endless. It's for these reasons why I give Call of Duty World at War a 79 out of 100 score. A horrifically brilliant game that I could not recommend enough for those interested in a game that doesn't shy away from anything. It is by far one of the best portrayals of the time period of the market, and World at War is the game most deserving of a remaster, as it can feel clunky at times and the player base is low. But that doesn't hold it back from being simply the best World War II game ever made. The year is now 2009. The Call of Duty franchise had just announced itself with two smash hits, Modern Warfare and World at War. But now it was time to follow up on COD 4 and release the first sequel. Where would the story go after the cliffhanger ending? How would the multiplayer improve on what was already revolutionary? And would the game introduce a third mode like World at War? Well, prepare to hit a 360 no-scope, become MLG, and grab some popcorn, as I look at what made Modern Warfare 2 a cultural icon. I usually start by talking about the campaign, but with Modern Warfare 2, its legendary status has to begin with its beloved multiplayer. After all, it's the multiplayer that we still remember fondly. It still appears on the internet to this day, and virtually everyone from the generation looks back nostalgically at a simpler time. Let's start with the weapons. Gone are the days of one overpowered gun. Infinity Waters, screw it. Let's just make everything broken. The ACR, the FAMAS, the UMP, one-man army, the dual-wield models. Infinity Ward really took the approach of that if everything is overpowered, then nothing is overpowered, as everything balances to a really strong level. The chaos behind the scenes meant that none of the weapons bar the models were patched, meaning even now in 2024, the list of overpowered things in Modern Warfare 2 never shrunk. This worked better than expected, as it gave this game this insanely fun feel of zero balance that wasn't really seen in the genre before, but it surprisingly worked with Call of Duty's casual nature. But is all this just rose-tinted glasses? Well, yes and no. The approach definitely made the game more fun, and a bit more of a sandbox for all sorts of weapons to be used. But certain weapons were left behind, and they do feel really bad compared to the best. This hit or miss weapon balance means less of a selection overall. Class selection though is a huge step up from the previous two games. Modern Warfare 2 comes with a wide variety of choice in its classes, and it really made every choice have a purpose, as you could only take one or two attachments. Most of the perks are very good at creating an even tougher choice, and the ability to upgrade them using pro perks with a challenge only made the choice harder once you had the best version. Customization would also make a big splash in Modern Warfare 2. It was simple compared to what we know now, but calling cards, emblems and clan tags all went that extra way to make you stand out in the lobby, whilst your weapon camo would show everyone that you had mastered a particular weapon. Speaking of customization, and we finally reached the time where kill streaks could be customised. Gone were the 3-5-7 streaks, and instead a choice of 15. Powerful kill streaks that would chain together to cause chaos in Modern Warfare 2. Popular choices were the Harrier, the Pavlo, Chopper Gunner, and the AC-130, all coming with devastating power that hasn't been seen in the 15 years since Modern Warfare 2. But the one you're probably waiting for me to talk about is the best of the lot, one that every player dreamed of getting once upon a time, one that would take a 25 kill streak, one that could end the game, the Tactical Nuke. By chaining up kills with the other streaks, players could earn this final streak which would end the game instantly. It goes down in infamy as one of the most memorable things to grind for in a game. before the days of getting that dopamine rush from getting a Battle Royale win. Getting a nuke in Modern Warfare 2 was the thing that would give you the bragging rights between you, the lobby, and your friend group. What made the kill streaks and multiplayer in general feel even more cool were the downright incredible voice lines from the faction leaders. Either when starting a game,
Rangers lead the way.
winning a game,
Your work is appreciated. Well done.
or calling in that devastating AC-130. The announcers in Modern Warfare 2 added that extra bit of oomph to every match, and is something that shows the detail Infinite Ward would go to in 2009. But in my opinion, the crowning achievement of Modern Warfare 2, the thing that gave it the legacy it has, the thing that allowed all this other stuff to be possible, the map design. I mean, dare I say it's perfect? I truly believe this is in the top 3 map selections in the series, if not number 1. High Rise, Favela, Rust, Scrapyard, Terminal, Afghan are all legendary, whilst Estate, Quarry, Subbase and Skid Row are all iconic in their own right. And that's just 10 of them. There are still 6 others: Invasion, Karachi, Rundown, Wasteland, Underpass and D-Row, which are all good as well, with the exception of maybe the last couple. They aren't just iconic, the gameplay that they create is what Call of Duty is. You have your classic 1v1 map in Rust, the best map for that style in the series. Your 3-lane maps like Scrapyard, which flows perfectly with its symmetry, and Favela, which is extremely different with its vertical gameplay and rooftops. Medium-sized maps like Afghan and Terminal have both long sightlines for snipers and close quarters areas for SMGs. Even large maps like Wasteland and Estate can be fun under the right conditions. All have that bright pop to them that Modern Warfare 2 had. It was a vibrant game, and the maps just had the right colour palette to go along with it. To get 16 maps in a game is a rare sight today, but to have about 95% of them to be good to the greatest of all time contenders, and well, you know you've cooked up something special. The Modern Warfare 2 multiplayer gets an 88 out of 100 score for me. What do I mean by the phrase cultural icon? Well, just take a look for yourself.
Get ready for the next round.
Riot shield. What else should we
Oh, riot shield! I'm a pussy that use riot shield!
You can ask any gamer in their 20s and 30s about Modern Warfare 2, and the memories will pour out. There were so many different communities to be a part of, and so many different things to do. Maybe you were someone who tried to get number 1 on the leaderboards. Or maybe you tried to go pro. Maybe you were a part of the growing sniper scene, and dreamed of joining a team like FaZe. Maybe you liked the MLG culture. Maybe you just played casually with your friends after school. Maybe you abused one-man army at the back of the map. Maybe you enjoyed trash talking people in the lobby throughout the match. My point is, it doesn't matter who you are, there was something that Modern Warfare 2 could provide for you. And it seemed everyone in 2009 and early 2010 was a part of the community. YouTube was growing, so even if you couldn't play, you could watch videos and still feel a part of it. FaZe Clan were growing rapidly, and gameplay YouTubers like Chris Smooth became part of your daily routine, as people watched them before hopping on the game themselves. Modern Warfare 2, love it or hate it, was and still is a cultural icon, and is the reason why it appears so prominently in our memories and media to this day. After the end of Call of Duty 4, Al-Assad and both Zakayevs had been taken out by Gaz, Soap and Price. But the ending left us with some unanswered questions. Did Soap and Price actually make it out? And who would inevitably fill the void left behind by Zakayev? We begin 5 years after the events of the first game, where a new threat has risen in the east. Vladimir Makarov is now the leader of the ultra-nationalists, and uses new tactics in order to assert power. We see this early on, as we're tasked with earning his trust as Private Joseph Allen. In a controversial mission, you assist Makarov in attacking an airport, with hundreds of innocent people ruthlessly executed by Makarov's orders, portraying him as a cold-blooded and emotionless man. Unfortunately for us, he also happens to be a smart man, as he quickly turns the gun on us and manages to frame the attack in Russia as one done by the West, thus starting a war. As this is happening, a new soldier makes his way up the ranks, Gary Sanderson, or as we know him, Roach. We meet Captain McTavish, who's been promoted after the events of Quad 4. It's there where we find we must track down Rojas to get a lead on Makarov. In an intense urban mission, we fight through the Brazilian favelas. It's an uphill battle, and the gameplay is vertical, making this mission extremely tough at parts. But eventually our boy Soap unleashes his inner Adam Copeland and spears Rojas. On home soil, the war has broken out, as Sergeant Foley and his squad defend the US towns. We play as Ramirez as we help secure Burgertown and the US suburbs. But things quickly take a turn for the worse. Back with Task Force 141, and our next task is to break out a mysterious man named Prisoner 627. Assuming this could be dangerous, we storm the gulag ready for anything that could be around the corner. The place is filled with enemies, but in the end, they're no match for Task Force 141. But when we get to the cell, the assumed target is hostile. But when we get hit to the ground, we realise that 627 isn't Makarov, but instead Captain Price, who had somehow made it out alive. Soap and Price are reunited, and Task Force 141 is complete. Headed by General Shepard, the main task force consists of Price, Soap, Ghost, who's new up to this point, and Roach. It's become the COD formula at this point to split the stories into two perspectives, and Modern Warfare 2 does the same, with the US Rangers led by Foley completing missions on home soil, whilst Task Force 141 track down leads on Makarov. Shortly after breaking Price out, he joins us on a mission at a naval base in Russia. He claims to have a plan to stop the war, so the rest of 141 follows along. But as he enters the submarine, something is wrong. The silo doors are open, and soon, this happens.
Wait, Price, no! We have a nuclear missile launch! Missile in the air! Missile in the air! Code black! Code black!
Price detonates a missile in the atmosphere, acting as an EMP across the world and destroying the International Space Station. But it manages to give the Rangers the final boost they need in order to reclaim the White House. In a mission that could easily end most games, we must get to the top and signal that it's been reclaimed. Fighting through this US landmark is as epic as it is sad. But finally, in a dramatic end, we reach the top and show the green flares, signalling to the jets that the US have defended home soil and reclaimed their most important building. But the story isn't over for 141. Shepard has intel on an estate that Makarov has been known to occupy. Roach and Ghost are sent to hunt the estate and find any more leads, while Soap and Price head to the boneyard. As Roach, we fight into the estate and eventually make it in. It's a gold mine, and we find plenty of data on Makarov that should help us put him to an end. But as we escape, and we reach the shopper, Shepard asks us if we have the DSM. We've got it, sir. But Shepard does this.
That's one less loose end.
No!
One less loose end, and a betrayal that no one saw coming in 2009. Half of 141 had been taken out by Shepard, and as far as Price was concerned, he was now enemy number one. Soap and Price disavow from 141, and chase down the backstabbing Shepard. Makarov reveals to us where Shepard is hiding, and as Makarov runs into the shadows, we get the most action-packed mission in the franchise. Endgame. We chase Shepard on a boat, and finally confront him. He reveals why he did this. His desire to become a hero after losing 50,000 men in the blink of an eye. Shepard gets the better of both Price and Soap, stabbing the latter. As he's about to finish the job on Price, Soap pulls out the knife and throws it towards the sly bastard as the game fades and the credits finally roll. Once again, we're left with a lot of unanswered questions, and one man is still out there. Modern Warfare 2 was a completely different ride to the previous Call of Duty games. It was the first game that felt like an action movie, and whilst that trope has become overused in Call of Duty nowadays, as this was the first of its kind, it felt special. And the action felt warranted, given the chaos going on in the world. The story subverted expectations, and the tensions were high throughout. A story of betrayal and revenge is always sweet, but in this case, you knew that the stakes were only going to rise going into the third game. Overall, I'd give the Modern Warfare 2 campaign an 83 out of 100 score. In order to keep at the same level as content as the year prior, Infinity Ward needed some sort of third mode to keep players happy. With zombies not really fitting the style of Modern Warfare, Infinity Ward instead opted for a new idea, and they would call it Spec Ops. An extension of the campaign, Spec Ops was an arcade-focused mode, taking new areas from campaign missions and turning them into shorter challenges that could be done with friends. In each level, in which there were 23 by the way, 3 stars could be earned depending on speed or difficulty. It's a real challenge to complete all the missions, and it certainly adds a new avenue in which players could play Modern Warfare 2. The 23 missions range from simple stuff like fighting off waves of enemies, completing timed objectives, or even racing in a snowmobile. The new locations added to the world that the campaign had built, and each mission felt different, as there was always new scenarios introduced. It may not be as good or have the same long-lasting legacy as a mode like Zombies. Spec Ops though was the cherry on top, and it's an underrated part of Call of Duty's history, and overall I'd give it a 65 out of 100 score. From start to finish, Modern Warfare 2 is an action movie that never slows down. Considering we'd come to expect a more serious campaign and slower multiplayer from the games prior, Modern Warfare 2 must have been a massive shock when players first picked up the controller and gave it a go. Its legacy still lives on, with all of its maps remastered in the most recent Call of Duty game, and still people look back on the memories they had playing Modern Warfare 2 into the early hours in the morning in 2009. As an overall Call of Duty game, I rate Modern Warfare 2 an 84 out of 100 score. Now listen, I know a lot of people has this game as their best Call of Duty game, and I'm not going to argue against that. The campaign just had a little bit of a lack of mission variety, and Spec Ops wasn't quite at the level of Zombies, but the multiplayer really shines through to create an overall package that is an absolute blast to play. Check out the rest of the COD Retrospective series if you haven't already, the link will be in the description, and let me know in the comments your favourite memory for Modern Warfare 2. And just remember,
history is written by the victor.
"2010. A new time period was upon us as we entered a new decade, and in Call of Duty, it was also time for a new period. The 60s. With the Cold War and Vietnam War being central to this Call of Duty experience, how would it cope being the first game from this era? Would the campaign start off fresh, or use the history from World at War in its story? Where would the multiplayer go after the peak of Modern Warfare 2? And would zombies continue to grow and become a behemoth in itself? Well, prepare to understand what the numbers mean and grab some popcorn, as I look retrospectively at Black Ops 1 and how it's almost perfect. Set during the 60s, in the midst of the Cold War and Vietnam War, the Black Ops campaign was a new era for Treyarch to tackle. This campaign was the first to not really sway off into two defined directions that come together in a sense, but instead follows the complex mind of Alex Mason, a man who's been brainwashed. But who did it, and what was it for? Well, we begin at the Bay of Pigs invasion, and in particular, a CIA mission to take out Fidel Castro. We take him out of what seems like ease, but as we try and get away, Mason is captured, and it turns out there was a body double. To understand what happens next, we must go back in time to 1945, in a mission that takes place later on in the game. Reznov and Dmitri from World at War return. We're sent by Kravchenko and Dragovich to find Steiner, the creator of a new weapon in Nova 6. Shockingly, Dragovich betrays his fellow Russians, and Dmitri gets caught up in the Nova 6, which is all witnessed by Reznov. Reznov manages to destroy the base, but the Russians have seemingly got away with Steiner and the knowledge of this new weapon. Reznov vows that these three men will meet their fate. We fast forward to 1963, where Mason and Reznov cross paths in Vorkuta prison. Following Reznov's 8 steps, we break out in what's a chaotic escape. But whilst jumping on the train, Reznov is unable to make it, and his fate for now is unknown. The CIA continues to track down leads on the bad guys, which brings us to 2 stunning missions in which we get to fully immerse ourselves in the 60s setting. Execute Order takes us to a Russian cosmodrome facility in Kazakhstan, which brings to light the post-World War II technology and highlights the Cold War tension from the time. It's a great mission with a mix of stealth and action as we rescue Weaver and we get a close look of our main antagonists. SOG explores the Vietnam War in a flashback from Mason's memory. This mission exemplifies the 60s, with the music and aesthetic giving off a nostalgic feel somehow, despite how horrific the war was. It's a mission akin to World at War, with intense trench combat, although this time we get to see napalm and mortar fire that differentiate this war from others. It's also in Vietnam where we discover the Russian defector was Reznov. We escape Vietnam, wading through rivers and going through tunnels where we never quite know what's around the corner. But the whole time, keen-eyed players may begin to notice that there's something off with Reznov during this mission. Whilst Mason and Woods are in Vietnam, Hudson, who's our mission handler, is with Weaver, and we're tracking down Clark, who can give us leads on Dragovich. In a fantastic mission, you fight through the Kowloon walled city, an infamous place housing the highest population density ever recorded, and it virtually acts as its own city in Hong Kong, despite being just 3 hectares large. We manage to get the information we need out of Clark, which leads us to Mount Yamantau, and we escape the walled city using ziplines and parkour. This mission is hands down one of the best from Black Ops 1. Next we head to Mount Yamantau, infiltrating a Soviet base up in the snowy Ural Mountains. This is such a contrast from the hot and humid weather we saw in Vietnam. After battling through the facility, we find out that Steiner is hiding on Rebirth Island. As this is going down, Mason and Woods track down Kravchenko, but after a frantic fight, both Woods and the Russian fall out of a window with a live grenade. Mason assumes both are gone, and instead heads to Rebirth Island, but against the orders of Hudson. This is where the true colours behind Mason's interrogation and programming start to reveal themselves, as the contrast between Mason's and Hudson's perspective are continually contrasted here. Eventually Mason finds Steiner and kills him as Reznov told him to, but Hudson wanted him alive to get more information out of him and is furious at Mason. Clearly Reznov's teaching stuck with Mason, but if you're smart you can start to connect the dots that maybe Mason wasn't fully programmed by Kravchenko or Dragovich to fight against the US, but instead was programmed by Reznov to fight against these 3 men. It isn't long after that Hudson reveals the truth. He was the one interrogating Mason to find out more about his programming. After the mission in Vorkuta, Reznov was never with us throughout the campaign, but instead a figment of Mason's imagination as part of the numbers sequence. Mason then remembers where the broadcast station is, a ship called the Rusalka. In an epic finale, we storm the ship to destroy it, and the game pulls no punches in what's action throughout. It ends with us taking out Dragovich, and finishing the wishes of our friend Reznov. But as the ending cutscene plays, we see clips of the President Kennedy. In a shock turn that calls back to an earlier cutscene and the theory around there being a second shooter, Black Ops 1 ends by scarily implying that Alex Mason of all people might have been the one that took out the President. Black Ops 1 back in 2010 was groundbreaking for its storytelling. It was the first Call of Duty game to really explore the main character and use the main protagonist as the core pillar of the story. Not only that, but it didn't just paint us a story and leave us to take it as it is, but instead makes us connect the dots and find out the truth with the hints left behind. This is why the campaign is still in the upper echelon of Call of Duty campaigns to this day. Unlike some of its predecessors, and even many of the game that followed on from it, Black Ops 1 is a very replayable campaign, as there's always more secrets to find. Whilst its mission variety and creativity aren't exactly outstanding, there are still a decent amount of ways in which Treyarch mixed up the gameplay, and all the locations they crafted fit the time period perfectly. So that's why the Black Ops 1 campaign gets an 88 out of 100 score. The golden age of Call of Duty multiplayer was underway, with 3 superb iterations so far. And if you've played Black Ops 1, then you probably understand how good it is, and what made it the 4th game of this golden era. But what makes it so good? And what makes it so different from the rest? Well, straight away, you'll notice a totally new way of unlocking stuff. COD points made their debut in Black Ops 1 and were at the centre of everything. They weren't paid like they are now, but instead they were earned and wagered. They control unlocks of weapons, attachments, perks, kill streaks, and even camos. It makes the game instantly recognisable, as no other game has a similar system. But what about those things you unlock? Well, let's start with the weapons. And much like the other games at the time, there's a wide selection. There's at least 4 or 5 in every class, with assault rifles and SMGs having 10 and 9 respectively. At the end there was a classified gun, if you had all of them, which built up a bit of intrigue to see what was hiding behind it. I mean, we have countless classics here. The FAMAS, the Galil, the Commando, the AK-74U, the Spaz-12, and even the debuting ballistic knife. Although, I will say that one criticism I do have is that the weapon balance here is not the best. The clear standouts here are the assault rifles, with most of the 10 choices being great options, and many of the other weapons not being quite up to scratch. Speaking of said weapons, and I have to talk about the sniping. Did you notice how I didn't name an iconic sniper? Well, as well liked as the L96 is in the sniping community, unfortunately it's in a game where sniping was heavily discouraged. At launch it was basically unusable, and even now, it's one of the more difficult games to snipe in due to the heavy sway. This is coming off the back of MW2 and the intervention, so Treyarch clearly wanted a bit more of a full auto meta, but snipers took a bit of a hit in return. Although saying that, it's not like the maps weren't designed for it, as the Black Ops 1 map selection allowed any playstyle to shine through if you were good enough. Firing range, summit and jungle appear in pretty much every Black Ops game, and as a trio they bring it all, from power position gameplay on a map like Firing Range, close quarters action on a map like Summit, or long range battles on jungle. But Black Ops had so many more maps that go underappreciated. Launch and Radiation are 2 maps that draw heavily from that Cold War theme, and bring that classic 3-lane map design to the forefront. Radiation introduced some elevated positions, major flank routes, and even an underground area that could be opened up using a control panel. Launch also had 3 lanes, and also some elevated positions, but it's the centre of the map that was clearly the part the Treyarch intended fights to take place. It's really old school map design that funnels players into the central fighting pit and makes gun skill the key factor. WMD is another favourite of mine. Despite being fairly large, WMD flows so well, with high ground on both sides which balances it out, and it provides some intense domination matches, with the B flag right in the open. And how can we forget? The most memorable, and perhaps the most important map of all time, Nuketown. I mean, what is there to say that hasn't already been said? Perfect symmetry between both sides, positions to fight over like the spot behind the truck, great flow for a small map. Treyarch really created the perfect small map. There had been Shipment and Dome before Nuketown, but none had the staying power that this map had. It's appeared in every single Black Ops game, and it will continue to do so for as long as the series continues. Some of us may forget how good this map is, but I'm telling you, if you go back to the original and play just one match, it will all click that this map isn't just fun because it's small, it's fun because it was well designed and has a variety mixed into that small space. My favourite aspect of the Black Ops maps though, is that they're all taken from a distinct location from the campaign, or the time period. Havana is set in Cuba in the midst of the Cold War, Summit is based on Mount Yamantau, and Jungle is set in a jungle in the Vietnam War. Game to game you really feel that variety, and this makes the multiplayer super fun to play. In fact, this game's just fun all round. The game mode variety is maybe the best we've ever had, as we have the usual suspects like TDM, Domination, Search and Destroy, but Treyarch also gave us the introduction of party modes. Gun Game, One in the Chamber, Sticks and Stones and Sharpshooter. They're all set aside from the public match playlists, and instead are part of their own wager matches. Wager matches allowed for those COD points I mentioned earlier to be put on the line for a chance of winning more. If you were good enough, you could back yourself and double down, or enter the High Roller playlist. It became a brag not just to be a high level, but to also be the richest player on your friends list. The games were short, high-octane action on smaller versions of the maps. They could be enjoyed alone or with friends, making them the perfect escape from the traditional multiplayer, and it's a real shame that this buy-in system has never made a return in the series. The little things really capped off the Black Ops multiplayer though. Kill streaks were as powerful as ever, with a wide selection. Prestige mode was back with a bang. It had 15 levels this time, with some of the most legendary icons. Customization was only getting better, with more calling cards, an emblem editor, and even more camos, including the gold camo, which was unlocked after Prestige 14, and is still the best version we've ever had. Theatre mode was here to help creators get clips, people to record their best games, or friends to have a laugh watching old films they created. Black Ops had so much content that it's actually quite hard to believe given today's standard. All of it was meant to be fun and keep the player invested. It didn't go out of its way to dangle a carrot in front of you, hoping you'd spend more money. Black Ops instead provided you a great multiplayer experience from top to bottom, and made you feel you were missing out on something if you didn't buy the DLC packs, all of which came with even more great maps to enjoy. Overall, I'd rate the Black Ops 1 multiplayer an 86 out of 100 score. A couple of years prior, the world was introduced into Call of Duty's first venture into a zombies horde mode. It was very successful, and grew into something that I'm sure the developers and players couldn't imagine. But following it up would be hard. I mean, Derice felt like such a pinnacle when it released. But the genius of Treyarch during this time were only getting started. The game released with 2 zombies maps. Kino der Toten, set in a German theatre, and 5, set in the Pentagon. Kino doesn't need an introduction. It's probably the most memorable map in Zombies, and it's where a lot of people were introduced to the mode. It keeps many of the same themes as World at War, both in tone and gameplay. It features that creepy horror style, and gameplay-wise it feels very similar to Derice, with a pack-a-punch system unlocked with a simple step, and it's not too far in size compared to the World at War counterpart. The new Thunder Gun replaces the Wunderwaffe. This time the Wonder Weapon wasn't glitched, and pardon the pun, but it packed a huge punch that could wipe away an entire horde with a click of a button. Where it differed from World at War, however, was in how it forced players to adapt and learn a new strategy. As there wasn't many good camping spots, players were forced to change their playstyle, and with the help of YouTube, word would spread of a new strategy. Training involved gathering up the zombies in a massive horde, allowing you to control their direction and keep the spawns under control. It required enough space, and luckily the stage was the perfect spot for this. The Kino stage became legendary, as once again players were able to feel that same satisfaction as they had previously with Zombies, where they would try and battle with their friends for the highest round, and after every match they had that feeling of wanting to go again. Kino also began to drop further hints at a story. The crew were back and better than ever, with even more great lines and dialogue between each other, and throughout the map there were more seeds planted for a growing storyline. The second launch map, 5, was similar in the fact that it didn't reinvent the wheel. However, it differed greatly in theme and gameplay. 5 was by far the hardest Zombies map up until this point, which gave it a mixed reception upon release, although this has begun to shift over the years. With no great training spots or camping spots, oddball strategies utilising traps would become essential in high rounds. The Winter's Howl was an awful wonder weapon, and the box weapons in BO1 would only get you so far. The setting of the Pentagon was groundbreaking though, tying in ideas from the campaign and allowing you to play as a whole new cast, including Kennedy and Castro. The Pentagon Thief was a new boss zombie who could steal your weapon. Many hate this, but I personally love the annoying nature of it because it had a great trade-off in the bonfire sale reward. The DLC season would get underway in Black Ops 1 with Ascension, a map set in a Russian space station and one that took training to a whole new level with countless incredible training spots. The new perk Stamina Up would only help with this, allowing the player to run for longer, whilst PhD Flopper became a fan favourite and made the Mustang and Sally a viable option. An Easter egg would also make its first appearance in Ascension. Primitive compared to what we have now, but having a little quest to do in the map only brought more intrigue to the story and secrets the map had. DLC 2 saw Call of the Dead introduced, and with it, another celebrity crew, including Michael Rooker and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And how can we forget the legend George Romero, who was the boss zombie of the map and would follow the player around all game, making camping a non-factor. It was the largest Zombies map up to this point, and it expanded what a Zombies map could be. It was huge with areas like the beach, lighthouse and boat, but they were all connected so well with travel options like a zipline. The wonder weapons were the VR11 and Scavenger, but unfortunately they both sucked, making this map impossible to get round 100 on, as the game receives an error before you can even make it. Every map in Zombies so far had been liked by the majority of the community, but DLC 3 and Shangri-La would change everything. This map completely split the community when it came out, as it was overwhelming to some. It was beautiful, no doubt, but the introduction of traps that would hurt the player, the new zombie variants, and a punishing tight layout frustrated many in 2011. Although the incredible wonder weapon, the 3179 JGB 215 or the baby gun, would help balance the playing field. However, over time people have come to respect the beauty of Shangri-La, and it's aged like a fine wine. It's Easter egged up the complexity, and it's one of the better co-op maps we've had in zombies. DLC 4 ended Black Ops 1 Zombies with a bang. Moon took zombies, well, to the moon, and it innovated like no other map before it. The game would start in Area 51, allowing points to be racked up before teleporting to the actual map. Once on the moon, you quickly discover you require a spacesuit. But that's not the only gadget that helps you, as the hacker is another vital tool and can do many game-changing things, such as re-rolling the mystery box or for doing parts of the Easter egg. The wave gun was the new wonder weapon and was very fun to use despite it not creating drops. However, the thing that set Moon apart was its Easter egg. It was very RNG based looking back, with a few other steps like Simon Says mixed in. Its ending, however, shocked players. We gained control of the MPD device from Samantha and switched places in the final act, and it ends with us blowing up the Earth. Players could only imagine where this complex story would go in future. Whilst I'm personally not the biggest fan of Moon and its RNG based Easter egg, its importance in Zombies history is clear, with it setting up Black Ops 2 and laying the foundation for this new style of zombies where larger maps and Easter eggs will become the centre of attention. Black Ops 1 Zombies really had it all, and it was the game that allowed other Zombies iterations to succeed. It innovated loads and expanded Zombies into a quest and a story, whilst also retaining the casual horde mode that everyone had fallen in love with. The introduction of all the World at War maps made this the ultimate Zombies experience at the time, and overall, I'd rate Black Ops 1 Zombies a 79 out of 100 score. Black Ops came out at a time where every Call of Duty game stuck to the winning formula, and also innovated enough to stand out on its own. That's why it was a part of the golden era, and is still memorable to this day. Its campaign has the most layered story, with some of the most in-depth and meticulous details from any COD campaign. Its multiplayer is filled to the brim with content, with an awesome selection of weapons and maps, and fun arcadey action that stuck to the themes of the time period. And finally, a killer zombies mode that grew with each DLC, from not just a fun horde mode, but instead a fun horde mode with a gripping story and characters we've begun to care about through the new Easter egg quests. It's for these reasons why I give Black Ops 1 an overall score of 87 out of 100. In terms of a complete package, Black Ops 1 is certainly up there as one of the most well-rounded games in this long series, as every mode will be vying for your attention. It's still got a community to this day, and is currently a safer game to play than Black Ops 2. But now it's time I heard your thoughts, so let me know in the comments what you would score Black Ops 1. But I've been Ranger, and this has been why Black Ops is almost perfect. In 2011, it was Infinity Ward's turn once again to release a Call of Duty game. This was a new team, with many members leaving during the fallout of the incident during Modern Warfare 2, and they would be supported by the debuting Sledgehammer games. So how would this duo cope? Would the story wrap up the trilogy in a fitting way? Would Spec Ops expand and grow like Zombies did? And how would they follow up on the best multiplayer Call of Duty had ever seen? We're prepared to jump into survival and finish the story, whilst grabbing some popcorn, as I show you why Modern Warfare 3 is secretly great. Modern Warfare 2 ended with us taking out Shepard, but there were still two unknowns. Where is Makarov? And will Soap be okay? We're thrown right into the action just minutes after the end of Modern Warfare 2, where Soap is receiving treatment. He's having flashbacks, giving us a really cool recap of the events that preceded us. The first mission is much the same as the prologue, throwing us right into the action on Wall Street as US soldier Frost, where the Russians are attacking the stock exchange. This hot start instantly conveys the scale of the war that's been built up over the last couple of games, and makes sense given world tensions have boiled over to start World War III. It's a great mission as opening missions go. Fighting through the stock exchange is a pretty epic set piece. And this mission is just short enough to where its action heavy nature doesn't begin to bore the player. Its placement is perfect, to put us right back into the world and reminds us of that looming threat led by Makarov. In fact, this isn't the only time we're reminded of Makarov in the opening stages of the story. As on the mission Turbulence, where we must protect the Russian president, Call of Duty does something it's never done before. It makes the player fail the mission, as Makarov is able to overpower us and kidnap the president to use him as leverage. That scene of him coming out the helicopter is one of the more chilling parts of the series, as his sheer presence spells danger. Add to this the terror attacks that Makarov causes in the first act, and he's at his absolute scariest in Modern Warfare 3. With Task Force 141 back together, and now joined by the new main protagonist Yuri, it's over to Sierra Leone for the first true 1-for-1 mission of the game, and one of my favourites from Modern Warfare 3. I love the stealth early on, with the suppressed marksman rifles and pistols. It really takes me back to the first game. The setting is a really good choice here, as it feels like we're stepping into unknown territory, seeing 1-for-1 explore Sierra Leone. And we see some different tactics as the mission progresses. This mission begins the search for Makarov, and sets in motion the events of Act 2. Act 2 continues the hunt, as 1-for-1 heads to Somalia, another piece of unknown territory for 1-for-1, and another that spells danger. We find Makarov's arms dealer, but again, he only gives us crumbs of information to further progress the trail. Next up, and we're in Europe, as Delta Force, who had previously helped protect New York in the first mission, are now in Paris tracking down Volk, another arms dealer. These next two missions are chase and escort missions, and as intense as they sound. Paris once again provides for a great set piece, and you might be noticing a theme in that respect, as I really appreciate the different locations that MW3 has us go to, as it really freshens up the gameplay, whilst also showing us the scale of the ongoing war. Volk reveals a meeting of Makarov to a hotel in Prague. In a sniping finale akin to the end of All Gillied Up, we take position ready to take down Makarov, but all of a sudden, boom, we hit the floor. Makarov knew the plan all along, and as we try to get out, it's clear that Soap is badly wounded by the fall. We get back to the safe house, and it's now becoming more and more of a pressing issue that Soap is bleeding out. Price tries everything, but in a crushing end, Soap doesn't make it out. But in his final breath, he shocks us by saying this. Yep, that's right. Makarov indeed knows Yuri. Price is overcome with emotions, and rightfully so. But he doesn't let Soap's passing affect him, as he instead turns his attention to Yuri, where the truth about this mysterious protagonist spills. He was with Makarov every step of the way. During the attempted assassination of Zakhaev. During the detonation of the bomb that killed 50,000 of Shepard's men. And even during No Russian, at which point Yuri decided enough was enough, and attempted to stop the attack. But he vows now that he's only on our side, and Price alone in this battle has no choice but to accept his word. And thus begins the final siege, culminating in the storming Makarov's stronghold. We're filled with hate for Makarov from the whole trilogy, but the previous mission, getting Soap, a character who'd been with us with the whole journey, and who we thought would be with us to the very end. 1-for-1 decide it's time for all guns blazing, and with the president now safe, Makarov has nothing left and instead goes into hiding. We eventually track him down to a hotel in Dubai. Price and Yuri armour up in Juggernaut suits, and on a rare occasion for the series, we get to control Price. We take out some of the toughest of Makarov's men as we progress upwards to the roof of the hotel. As we close in on Makarov towards the roof, a chopper attacks us, and Yuri is impaled by part of the building. With no time to waste, Price has to go alone, and he makes it to the roof. Makarov is getting away, but in a last-ditch effort, Price jumps for the helicopter and is able to crash it onto the roof. An epic ending. But Makarov has made it out, and is in a better condition than us. We crawl for the pistol, but to no avail. Right as Makarov is about to finish us off, Yuri runs in, distracts Makarov, and unfortunately takes a bullet for Price, who in the meantime is able to jump up, wrap a cord around his neck, and smash him through the hotel glass, ending Makarov and the series in an epic way. But as Price sits there, we think about all that's been sacrificed to get to this point, and we question, was it really worth it? Modern Warfare 3's campaign is a mixed bag for me. The story wraps up in a very fitting way, and is filled with a couple of twists and turns to keep it interesting, but the mission design is very bland, and there's little to innovate. Far too many times it plays it too safe, and doesn't expand into something more, which is why aside from the story, many of the missions are forgettable. That being said, the story is so strong that it still pulls through as an okay campaign, as wrapping up a trilogy can be difficult. That's why overall, I'd still give the Modern Warfare 3 campaign a 62 out of 100 score. The Modern Warfare 3 multiplayer is really the area of the game that I would say is underappreciated the most. A lot of it's been sadly forgotten in time, as the games before it, and a certain game that released after it, takes up much of people's memories. But I'm here to remind you that this experience was special in its own right. Let's start with the maps this time, as for me, it's a standout area of the game which I always see people forgetting. Now I will get this out of the way. I don't think any of the maps look particularly great, as they don't have that bright pop to them that the previous Modern Warfare game had, which is maybe why they merge into a collection for some people. But some gems for me include Mission, a map set in Sierra Leone, with a really good mix of gameplay, especially for objective modes. The tight areas that approach the B flag are always exciting to fight in with a shotgun or SMG, and the high ground on the other side of the map is perfect for assault rifles. Hard Hat is a map that maybe is remembered more due to its appearance in Modern Warfare 2019, but that version didn't do it justice at all. This map flows superbly in the original Modern Warfare 3, and always has really intense, fast-paced matches. The tunnel in the middle of the map is one of the most memorable spots in the game, as it can cause some downright ridiculous kill feeds to stack up. Seatown is a map I cannot believe hasn't been remastered. This is classic 3 lanes, with side lanes offering some flank routes and verticality, whilst the middle of the map is congested and centralises the gameplay. This is the map that I want to see remastered the most, as I feel a modern version could really bring out the map's aesthetic, which would make it instantly a star. But there's so many more great maps that fall into the same range as the ones I've mentioned. Arcaden, Underground, Village, Carbon, Bootleg and Fallen all fall into the 6 to 8 out of 10 range for me, and all offer something different to the experience in both theme and gameplay. There are a few maps that everyone seems to remember from Modern Warfare 3, most notably Dome and Resistance, which by the way are brilliant, but I can't seem to understand why a couple more don't come into the conversation as often. Modern Warfare 3 did come out with its duds in the map department, maybe more than the games before it. A map like Outpost has potential, but the poor visibility can make it frustrating. Interchange is a decent map gameplay wise, but the theming to me is extremely dull. Lockdown is a map I forgot was even in the game, and is again pretty average. And finally Downturn is up there with one of the worst maps in the entire series. But for a game that had a huge selection of 16 maps, 17 if you include Terminal, it baffles me that the majority of the Modern Warfare 3 maps are forgotten. The large majority of them epitomise what a Call of Duty map is. In fact, Modern Warfare 3 didn't just come with a large selection of maps, but the entire game is full to the brim with content. From stuff we expect, to new stuff which makes it unique. The weapon selection is huge, with more than 5 in every class. Fan favourites return like the ACR and UMP, but MW3 also introduced the MSR, the MP7 and the FMG9s, which had all become iconic for their own reasons. The weapon balance is good, way more balanced than Modern Warfare 2, with a few standouts and weak weapons of course, but it's a step in the right direction for a level playing field. The introduction of weapon levelling was fantastic, and it really set in motion the concept we've come to know over the last decade, as levels unlocked attachments, weapon proficiencies which were also new, and camos which continue to grow in numbers. The old Modern Warfare style class creation as a whole really peaked here, with so many options to choose from. Perks could once again be upgraded to pro perks, there were so many different choices in equipment, and strike packages were really the cherry on top. The ability to choose what style of kill streaks you wanted was game changing, and is still yet to return. Assault is the traditional option, giving you a powerful set of kill streaks if you manage to go on a kill streak of your own, and were designed to be the most powerful. Support streaks didn't reset after respawn, allowing them to be gained much easier, but weren't as powerful, and were more of a supportive role as the name suggests. And finally, my favourite. The specialist streaks would give you an additional perk the more kills you chained up, until finally you reach the specialist bonus, giving you every single pro perk in the game, making you a super soldier who can take on anyone. The amount of options you have is crazy. This is the game where I spend the longest choosing what combination of things I want to make the best class possible. But again, there's even more content. How about progression? Well, how about 80 levels and 20 levels of prestige? The icons are once again detailed and memorable, and this time there was a prestige shop where things can be permanently unlocked, or additional bonus items like double XP tokens can be claimed. Add to that the weapon levelling that I mentioned previously, and you have a game where there's always something to do. Finally, I want to talk about the game modes. No, I'm not going to talk about the typical TDM or domination, but instead what this game introduced. Kill Confirm made its debut and has since become a staple of the franchise, innovating TDM into something a bit more objective and fast paced. Face Off was a fun idea, where players could 1v1, 2v2 or 3v3 online on smaller maps rather than go into a custom game. But the one that stuck with me the most, and the one that I've played the most, is easily Infected. I mean, I don't even know where to start with this incredible game mode. It's just so damn fun. Infected is very similar to Infection from Halo, where one player starts off infected and must get every player from the other team to join them, but there's just something special about how it works in Call of Duty. The goal at the start is just to see how long you can stay around, but eventually you might start getting some kills, and that's where the fun begins. All of a sudden you realise you might be on a 20 kill streak, and a few kills later and you've earned the Moab. Each game is short and chaotic, with 18 players, and time honestly flies by as you go from game to game. The maps don't have to be traditionally good to work either for this mode, as it just depends on whether there's good spots to hold down. In fact, when I think of Infected, I tend to call back to those intense battles over areas where everyone's holding down, such as this corner in Village, the high ground on Outpost, or my favourite, the Burger Town in Arcaden. The game modes cap off an all-round brilliant experience for Modern Warfare 3. Content is plentiful, and no matter where you look, there's always fun to be had. Overall, I rate it a solid 78 out of 100 score. Spec Ops was Infinity Ward's answer to a third mode in 2009, and it was a fun mode, but it left a little bit to be desired. This is only compounded by the excellent Zombies mode in BO1, so the expectation was high for Modern Warfare 3. And while despite Spec Ops still not reaching the same level as Zombies, this version is by far the best of its kind. The classic missions return, and are essentially the same system as Modern Warfare 2, with the main goal being to collect all the stars, but there is an increase in mission variety. Mile Hijack is a throwback to Mile High Club from the original Modern Warfare, and it runs at the exact same intensity. Toxic Paradise lets you run around in a Juggernaut suit and cause absolute chaos, and is as fun as it sounds by the description. But finally, by far the most innovative and best Spec Ops mission from Modern Warfare 3, Hostage Taker. Set during the mission where Makarov takes the president, you are tasked with saving the president's family before Makarov can get to them. But the level allows you to go 100% stealth. This to me is what Spec Ops is all about. A variation on a mission we already knew from the campaign, that is able to build on the story, check. A fun and short mission that is both difficult and replayable, check. And finally, something innovative that expands what a third mode in Call of Duty is, check. The stealth in this mission is so enjoyable. Having to stay hidden from the guards, using cars and foliage as cover, whilst always being wary of the chopper flying over you, it's just superb. This alone would be good, and it would make this iteration of Spec Ops a step up from MW2. But the developers had another ace up their sleeve: Chaos Mode and Survival Mode. Chaos Mode was the most arcadey and casual thing this game had to offer, with a non-stop rush of action, with a primary goal to chain up as many points as possible. It really is a callback to old school arcade games, where fun is the only thing in mind, and everything else can take a step back. Survival Mode, on the other hand, was the answer to Zombies. Yeah, the rest of Spec Ops was a good alternative for Zombies, but this was for players who love that round-based gameplay loop. You're deployed in a multiplayer map of your choice, with each one offering different enemies and difficulty. Progression further makes it obviously harder, but it also allows you to expand your weaponry as you buy new guns and bling them out with attachments. And when you really start balling, you can afford kill streaks, including everyone's favourite Delta Squad, who's a group of soldiers that can help you out. It's really immersive being able to build your own little army to fight off the attack, but be warned, as these guys are no match for the later waves. Trying to beat your high score and progress up the leaderboard is the main replay value, as well as levelling up to our new weapons and equipment. But as good and as fun as the mode is, it can be quite limited in nature, due to it not having a story or long-term goal like an Easter egg to attach itself like in Zombies. That's why, as much as I love Survival, and some of the traditional Spec Ops missions, I have to admit that it doesn't hold a candle to Treyarch Zombies. But Infinity Ward were in the right direction with this one, and it's a shame that we never got to see this version of Spec Ops be expanded into something truly incredible. But overall, I'd still give MW3 Spec Ops a 70 out of 100 score. I said in the intro how fans of this series tend to forget parts of Modern Warfare 3, but I hope by showing you all the things that make up this great game, I've been able to remind some of you that maybe it isn't as far behind in the games of its time as we may have initially thought. The campaign can feel a little mundane at times, with the same old style of missions, but the new locations and the willingness we all had to see the end of this great storyline pulled it through. The multiplayer might not have the same level of maps as Modern Warfare 2, but it has so much good content in the other areas that it makes up for it. And finally, while Spec Ops couldn't reach the quality and popularity of Zombies, it still served as a great experimental third mode, where you could tell the developers had fun, and survival is still a great option even in 2024. It's for these reasons why I give Modern Warfare 3 an overall score of 75 out of 100. If you haven't played Modern Warfare 3 in a while, I really do encourage you to go back to it. With the hindsight of where the series has gone, it really does hold up in the upper echelon. I hope you've enjoyed this retrospective and review. Please let me know your thoughts on Modern Warfare 3 in the comments. And hey, maybe leave a like if you want to help get the series rolling. Next up is, spoiler alert, my favourite Call of Duty game, so stick around if you want to see that. But I've been Ranger, and this has been why Modern Warfare 3 is secretly great. Where do I begin with Black Ops 2? It was the last game of the golden era, from 2007 to 2012, and as a result, holds a special place in this series for a lot of us. Some easily consider it within their top 3 games from the Call of Duty franchise, but I personally like to go a step further. I consider Call of Duty Black Ops 2 the best Call of Duty we've ever had. But why? Could it have been the awesome campaign, filled with innovation and a captivating story? Or maybe it was the masterpiece of a multiplayer? Or finally, the Zombies mode that contains some of the best maps in Zombies history? Well, it's time you grab some popcorn as you find out why it's all of these 3 things. Black Ops 2 takes us in a new direction with its campaign, being split into 2 vastly different time settings. Firstly, the more classic Black Ops setting in the late 80s, and secondly set in 2025, which is, okay, wow, next year? Man, I'm getting old. We start in the 80s, in Angola, as we support Jonas Savimbi in the fight against the MPLA. I love how Black Ops 2 shows us these conflicts that you may not have heard of, but it really makes you immersed into the time period. Savimbi ends up helping us, giving us the location of everyone's favourite, Frank Woods. But it isn't really looking good for the guy, as once we get to him, we find out he's been tortured in a cargo container. The man behind his torture is a man named Raul Menendez, who, as we come to find out, is an evil, evil man. See, Menendez is a man who hates the US, and anyone who's a part of it. The US assault on his home country started this, but it was fueled further by attacks on his cartel and his sibling Josefina, the latter of which sent Menendez over the edge. Once he had lost all he had, he vowed to do the same to those who did it to him, and thus, Mason, Hudson and Woods unknowingly were in for a world of hurt. In a creative spin on a backstory mission, we see the events of Josefina unfold from both Woods' perspective, but more importantly, Menendez' perspective. As Woods, we feel the rage he feels towards Menendez for all the torture, but this rage leads to the vital mistake of killing Josefina. From Menendez' perspective, we get to see the hate and vengeance that runs throughout him. In the lead up to the confrontation, we get to play as Menendez, who runs around like a maniac with a shotgun and sword, and we feel almost invincible, as nothing else matters to him but Josefina. Once we reach her, and you see her get caught in the crossfire, you almost feel sorry for Menendez, as you understand that he's just lost everything, and even though he's the bad guy, it's the sympathy we feel here that makes him such a successful villain. You can understand his reasoning, and whilst it might not be morally right, it's certainly justifiable to him, a man with nothing left to lose and running on pure hatred. In the space of a few missions, Black Ops 2 is able to build up one of the scariest and most evil villains in the franchise, and somehow make us care about his story, a truly incredible feat in such a short space of time. In 1986, we join Woods and Mason on a CIA mission to take out Menendez during the Soviet-Afghan War in Afghanistan. This mission expands what a Call of Duty mission is, allowing us to explore an expansive level on horseback. Despite this level being linear, its openness makes it feel large, and gives it a sense of scale that's never been done before in this franchise. We eventually reach and interrogate Kravchenko, who's working alongside Menendez. Mason fights off the number sequence during this, a nice callback to the first game. He gives up the information we need, and Woods finally caps him. But as we leave, we're betrayed by those who we thought were allies and left in the desert, until two men save us. In another callback to Black Ops 1, Mason hallucinates one to be Reznov. This mission is perfect from both its creative gameplay that feels so open in 2012, and its story, which ties back superbly to Black Ops 1 and ties up any loose ends from that story. The last mission set in the past that sets up the events in 2025 is Suffer With Me, and it explains everything. We begin by capturing and escorting a Panama politician, who we assume is our high-value target. But once we reach the checkpoint, we're told another man is now the priority. So we take up a sniper position, and we're told it's Raul Menendez. Either shoot him in the knee and make him suffer, or shoot him in the head and end the bastard. But as we go to confirm the kill, something seems off. Everyone seems smug, and the worst case scenario has just become a reality. The man we just shot wasn't Raul Menendez, but our brother-in-arms Alex Mason. Out of nowhere, we're shot to the floor, and Menendez appears to enact pain. He shoots off both of Woods' kneecaps, which explains his state in 2025, and takes us to a room where we see one of the darkest scenes that I can remember. Mason, Hudson and Woods are all here, and so is David Mason, Alex Mason's kid, who's watching this all unfold. Menendez wants everyone to suffer like he has. He begins with Hudson, as he gives him the kneecap special that Woods got, before slitting his throat with a pendant. Woods watches on helplessly, as both of his closest allies from the previous missions lay still. And now Menendez turns his attention to David Mason. He teaches him about suffering, and he wants David to come after him once he's old enough to understand what's happening. And that's where we pick up in 2025, where David Mason, now military trained, is out to get revenge on the man that caused him suffering and has risen to power once again, Raul Menendez. So now we're up to speed with the events that got us here. It's time for Call of Duty to delve into the near future setting for the first time. And what no better way to start than the mission Solarium. Here we get to see all this new technology, and despite it being high-tech and futuristic, it doesn't feel totally out of the realm of possibility, making these near future missions more grounded in reality, which is really key for a Black Ops game. This mission begins the hunt for Menendez, and the scenes of David Mason visiting an old wheelchair-bound Frank Woods begin to make more sense, as we now see he wants answers from what happened in the past and the key to taking out the man that caused all the suffering. We also find out at this time that Menendez has been running a terrorist group by the name of Cordis DA since the year 2014, using cyber warfare and technology to cause havoc around the world. Menendez wants expert hacker codenamed Karma, so David Mason and the team track her down first to prevent any danger. First we head to the Colossus Resort, which provides a beautiful backdrop, whilst we use another modern gadget to get a step ahead. We storm the futuristic looking Club Solar, jamming out to some tunes and fighting for enemies. Where at the end of the mission, Black Ops 2 reveals its biggest innovation: multiple outcome missions that will impact the later story. Either Karma is saved and DeFalco is taken out, or Karma is kidnapped and her fate is left unknown for now. In order to get more info on Menendez, the team uses an insider named Farid, who's infiltrated Menendez's inner circle for intel. Menendez suspects it's a traitor though, and ends up giving Farid the ultimatum. After being handed a pistol, the player can choose to either shoot Menendez or shoot Harper. You know you shouldn't blow your cover, and Harper wants it to be him. But if you instead choose Menendez, he predicts the plan all along and instead executes Farid. Either way, at the end of the mission we're able to capture Menendez. We take him back to the USS Barack Obama for interrogation, which is overseen by Briggs. However, Salazar, who's been working with us since the start, helps Menendez escape. He attacks Briggs and takes control of the US drones, causing an attack on Los Angeles. Now this is where I introduce you to strike missions. You see, throughout your playthrough of Black Ops 2, you would have been offered the chance to play these optional missions, where you control an army of soldiers to complete objectives. I must admit, they are quite refreshing at first, but they get dull on repeat playthroughs. However, they do impact the story, and in particular, if you had chosen to complete the ones before this mission, the ship we're on would withstand the attack. If not, however, the ship would succumb to the subsequent conflict. Yet another example of dynamic storytelling by Treyarch. This sets up our finale, where David Mason, fueled by all the years of suffering dealt by Raul Menendez, finally hunts him down to his facility in Haiti. It's an epic battle, fighting alongside and against all the new technology this near-future time setting provides. It's Judgment Day, and there is bloodshed throughout this epic end, until we finally reach him. And here, Black Ops 2 reveals that Ace has had up his sleeve the whole time. All these different scenarios we've chosen culminate in 4 main endings, with even some bonus things depending on your choices throughout. However, to end this trilogy, from World at War to Black Ops 2 on a high note, I will focus on the best ending. Menendez is executed by Mason, and the Second Cold War is able to come to an end. Before finally, the big reveal. In a scene that can make any grown man cry, it's revealed that Alex Mason is alive. If you shot him in the knee and were a lousy shot, Alex and David Mason are reunited with Frank Woods. And this story for now has its happy ending. Wow, what a campaign. Replaying it and its contemporaries gave me a newfound respect for Black Ops 2's level of innovation. From optional missions to different endings, this game broke new ground for what a Call of Duty campaign is. And it's a real shame that the games that followed on from it didn't learn from its success. Overall though, with its dynamic storytelling, excellent set pieces, and for wrapping up the Black Ops story in a fitting way, Black Ops 2's campaign gets an 84 out of 100 score for me. Do you hear that? That theme song in the background is signalling the best multiplayer experience in the franchise. The Black Ops 2 multiplayer takes everything we love about the golden era of COD, puts it all together and gives us its own spin. This is underlined by the near future setting that allowed Treyarch to be a bit more experimental in everything from maps, weapons, and even their kill streaks, or should I say score streaks. Yes, that's right, Black Ops 2 was a game that introduced us to score streaks, a feature that's since become a staple. It helped to not only differentiate the game, but also encourage objective play and keep a faster style of gameplay that discouraged camping. Although this is Call of Duty, so campers could still find success. The streaks that were in the game provided a fun mix, including stuff we've already had before like the RCXD or the Stealth Chopper, but also introduced some new ones to fit the near future theme. Some of my favourites being the Guardian, which was ideal for objective modes, and the Swarm, that would cause absolute chaos across the map. Speaking of the maps, and should we just waste no more time and get right into them? When you talk about favourites, in most Call of Duty games it's easy to pick out an answer, but with Black Ops 2, you're really spoilt for choice. There's something for everyone. Are you someone who loves rushing around with an SMG or shotgun? Then I can bet that Hijacked or Nuketown are high up in your estimation. What about all of you objective players out there? I know you like them intense domination matches, and while I'm sure you also like standoff and slums, because they are both the perfect size to allow objective modes to shine, and any playstyle to be effective. And hey, all you snipers out there running around with your DSR and Ballista, I haven't forgot about you. And while I'm sure you haven't forgot about the long sightlines on Carrier or Turbine, as they are the perfect places for long sniper shots. But I know there's also one final group of people screaming, well, what about this map? Or what about that map? So let's say screw it and list them all. Overflow and Meltdown. I mean, these maps aren't standouts, but I know for a fact at least one of you likes these solid mid-sized maps. Express and Plaza, anyone? I know for a fact that people like these ones. Both with a mix of vertical gameplay, tight indoor areas, and even a dynamic map component on Express. I know for a fact that at least one of you will like Yemen or Cargo. They might not be the tippy top for everyone, but surely you SMG players love the tight streets on Yemen, mixed to that risk versus reward central area, and sniper players, I'm sure you like some of the sightlines on Cargo. Now Drone, hear me out here. I can't be the only one who actually likes Drone. For a large map I enjoy the way it flows, as it pushes most people into this building. So please let me know if you're also a part of the Drone fan club. Alright. I can hear the cries. Yes, I haven't mentioned Raid yet, but I haven't forgot about it. I'm just saving the best till last. But there's one more map quickly. Aftermath. Any fans of Aftermath out there? Anyone like camping? Having to run miles after respawn? Does anyone actually like playing on this ugly mess of a map? Yeah, That's what I thought.
Actually, I really like playing Aftermath with my LSAT plus Target Finder combo. I stay in this corner right here and I wait for people to walk by. You just need to get good, mate.
Not sure who that was. But okay, I've wasted enough time. So let's talk about Treyarch's magnum opus. Raid is the quintessential Black Ops map. That 3-lane layout is present, each lane providing something different, with a long sprawling sightline overlooking the pool, or on the other side, power positions that face each other. Both with flank routes to give players something to think about. The middle is that chaotic central area, where the carnage really takes place, with buildings either side and choke points that perfectly funnel players in from both the buildings, and successful flankers who took the risk down the side lanes. And this is all topped off by a flawless aesthetic in an LA mansion with that luxurious white colour, complemented by that sunny blue sky. Fighting in this mansion, surrounded by all the supercars, is a treat, and no matter how many matches I play on this map, it's impossible to find it dull. You may think I've gone over the top glazing Raid, but I'm giving it the respect it deserves, as maybe the remasters have clouded our perspective on how unbelievably good the original version was. What's that? Oh yeah, there's also 16 DLC maps, all of which I've happened to play. So let's get into a quick fire review. DLC 1 saw Downhill, Mirage, Hydro and Grind. Downhill and Hydro are pretty meh, so let's forget about them. Mirage, on the other hand, is a solid map, with a diving board on one of the side lanes, and I really want to see it remastered. Grind is an all-time classic, with an unmatched summery vibe and its classic 3-lane Treyarch action. DLC 2 saw Encore, Magma, Vertigo and Studio. The first 3 are all decent maps with a cool look to them, but none of them really stand out to me. Studio, on the other hand, is by far the best remaster we've ever seen. Take the layout of firing range and make it into a Hollywood studio filled with these cool film sets. I actually prefer this version to the original, and I love how Call of Duty at this time would take a map that we already loved and reimagine it in something completely different, rather than just giving it the same look. DLC 3 saw Detour, Cove, Rush and Uplink. Detour sucks, so let's just forget about it. Cove was yet another fun, bright map, with a unique circular design, where the action constantly moved around the map. You can also see Hijack, so yeah, that's pretty cool as well. Rush is Call of Duty Paintball Edition, but all jokes aside, is another classic. So fun in domination, as there's cover everywhere, which can make it really enjoyable to bounce from cover to cover and take that B flag. Uplink is a remaster of Summit, and whilst it plays well, it doesn't look as good as the original. DLC 4 saw Dig, Frost, Pod and Takeoff. Pod is terrible, so again, let's forget about it. Dig and Frost are alright, but again, not really standouts, so let's push them 3 to the side and talk about the Stadium remaster Takeoff. Wow, what a map. Perhaps the most beautiful in the game, set in an offshore spaceport, it's great for all playstyles. The power position in the middle is the perfect mix of risk versus reward, and despite the map being fairly large, it keeps a good speed. But whilst you're playing on this fine selection of maps, you will certainly need a good set of weaponry to keep things interesting. And well, as a result of Black Ops 2 setting in 2025, it enabled Treyarch's freedom. An average of 4 or 5 in each class meant there was something for everyone. And I would even argue that this game has the most iconic guns, as in every class I can think of at least one that was a go-to. A lot of the assault rifles were fan favourites, but everyone has a love for the MTAR and the M8A1, which were both versatile options. And who can forget the AN-94? A well-rounded assault rifle unlocked at level 55 that all of us just couldn't wait to unlock back in 2012, and it didn't disappoint. It felt like a laser beam with its easy recoil pattern, and its high damage made getting kills easy. And who could forget the beautiful sound it made? SMGs again have a wide choice of great options, but the main standouts were the MSMC and Scorpion Evo. The former felt like a pocket assault rifle that came with the benefits of an SMG, with its fast movement speed, but also good range and accuracy. The latter was your typical SMG, with little range, but a fire rate that would melt anyone up close, and it made a sound that struck fear across the map. Then there was the Peacekeeper. The first DLC weapon in Call of Duty was another hybrid style SMG, and it feels similar to that of the MSMC, but those iron sights made it a treat at all ranges. LMG users were treated to the LSAT, which when combined with the target finder It's probably the most no-skill gun I've ever seen. And I know for a fact that a certain someone from earlier in this video would be loving it right now. Moving on to the shotguns, and would you look at that, the KSG, the complete opposite to the LSAT, a high-skilled gun. This slug shotgun isn't for everyone, but it's one of the most rewarding weapons to use in the game. Players that can land their shots are treated to great range for a shotgun, and a satisfying weapon to use. But finally, let's end on my favourite weapons from Black Ops 2. Maybe it was down to my addiction to watching FaZe Clan back in the day, but the DSR and the Ballista. Both bolt action snipers, so you might wonder how different they could really be. Well, I'll just teach you. The DSR is the hard-hitting one, and it has a great one-shot area, but the chamber speed was slower. The Ballista, on the other hand, has less of a one-shot area, but was much faster, making it the go-to for quickscoping. The DSR therefore took the role of being the sniper for more casual snipers, as well as being the one used for trickshotting. The Ballista was the 1v1 and free-for-all sniping king, and it feels so satisfying to chain up kills with. The creator class system only amplified how fun these weapons were. The Pick 10 system was a revelation, and it created endless possibilities at the time. Wildcards enhanced the experience, allowing the player to focus in on being more perk-based, equipment-based or weaponry-based. Removing pro perks did simplify some of the choices, but I think it works with the system in place. And finally, customization would once again reach a new height. Calling cards would show off status, emblems would show off creativity, and lead to some interesting designs to say the least, and camos would show commitment. There was a wide selection of earnable camos, with the classic headshot and challenge system coming into play here. Classics like Cherry Blossom appeared, and even a secret camo, Diamond. Diamond looks incredible, and is still in my opinion the best version we've seen. It gave players that extra thing to do, other than prestiging, and it began the theme of a camo grind that is now a staple. This game also continued the tradition of party modes, and proved that Black Ops games were the most arcadey and relaxed to play. Wow, is that everything? I'm really sure it's not. I've 100% missed out on features that you love, and maybe even some features that I love. So I think overall, taking everything into account here, I can safely rate the Black Ops 2 multiplayer an outstanding 91 out of 100 score. I said in the intro that Black Ops 2 contains some of the best zombies maps of all time, and that is true. But we had to go through some rough times to reach the light at the end of the tunnel. It began on launch of Transit, and the zombies version of Nuketown. The Resident large map and small map combo began here, and to be honest, it was a disaster. Let's list the positives of Transit. It's fun with friends. And now let's list the downsides. A map traversal system that increases downtime and can leave you stranded. A convoluted buildable system with parts all over this massive map. Empty space in between the key areas with nothing but fog and the dreaded denizens who grab at you to no end. The worst Pack-a-Punch step I've ever seen, where you must place this turbine in this random spot nowhere near the Pack-a-Punch, hope it hasn't been destroyed while you make your way to the town, but by the time you get there, it has been, and you must go through the whole map again. The worst wonder weapon in zombies history that breaks after a minute. Lava. The Avogadro, a bad Easter egg. Transit was awful, and for any of you who want to tell me otherwise, it's time you take those rose-tinted glasses off and try and play a solo match of Transit, and then tell me it's good with a straight face. And it didn't get much better with the other launch map. Nuketown was taken straight from the multiplayer and put right in zombies. And yep, it's about as fun as it sounds. The tight areas do make it difficult to train in, and a bit rewarding as a result if you do well, and I am a fan of the random perk drops throughout the game. But I can't get over how lazy this map is, with no new areas from the multiplayer map. Could they at least let us have access to the bunker? Maybe if they did that, Alpha Omega wouldn't have existed. But I'm just getting ahead of myself. Let's move on to the DLC season of Black Ops 2 Zombies. And the wacky experimental theme of this game continues. Die Rise shares a similar name to Der Riese from World at War, but its gameplay couldn't be any more different. Set in a skyscraper in China, this map introduces vertical gameplay into zombies, with things like smart routes to take that can save on points, jumps across large gaps to reach new areas, and elevators that work both as traversal options and carry perks. with a collection of buildables such as the trample steam that's also used for traversal, an awesome and easy to build wonder weapon like the Sliquifier, and a fantastic training spot. You would think this map is very good, but unfortunately the things that set it apart are its main flaws. I actually think this map can be very enjoyable, as it falls into that middle ground of casual and complex maps, but the parkour style elements and elevator system simply make this map too random, and a lot of game overs can feel like a result of the map rather than a mistake by the player. Add to that a pretty lackluster Easter egg, the new perk that was added in Who's Who that was probably the worst ever, and the fact they teased PhD Flopper, the one perk that would have actually been useful for this map. The first DLC for Black Ops 2 simply fails to offer a better experience than what Black Ops 1 had provided. With Black Ops 2 zombies looking rough, with 3 below par maps and a community which slowly began to crumble, it's fair to say that Treyarch needed something to give people a reminder that zombies are still a game mode we know and love. Enter Jason Blundell, a man who'd been working on zombies previously, but was not in a position to make the big calls. However, with DLC 2, everything would change, as he led the creative direction, and well, it turned out to be a smash hit. Mob of the Dead took us to Alcatraz Prison, a prison island set off the coast of San Francisco, infamous for being the ultimate purgatory. We play as a whole new crew, Finn, Al, Sal and Billy. This map instantly caught the attention, as we were introduced to Blundell's creativity with the Afterlife mode, allowing the player to self-res or open up many parts of the map. One thing that I think Blundell gets right with his maps is a perfect balance between difficulty and having the right tools to tackle it. Whilst Mob has tight spaces, a scary boss zombie in the Warden, and a complex setup for beginners, it also rewards players for completing the map's side tasks. Whilst you could easily grab a couple decent weapons from the box, buy a few perks, and head to the canteen training spot and be perfectly fine to get to a respectable round. Instead, crafting the zombie shield, flying the plane to Pack-a-Punch, and crafting the acid gat wonder weapon will help you go that much further. The new perk Electric Cherry will also help. One of the more underrated perks that's since become a fan favourite, allowing the player to reload safely by shocking nearby zombies. It fits the theme of the map perfectly. Speaking of which, the greatest strength of Mob to me is its intoxicating atmosphere. As soon as you step into this place, you feel trapped, with the tight cell block areas conveying a sense of claustrophobia. The underground part gives a sense of mystery to the map, and once you finally step outside, the stormy weather completes the downcast feel this map's going for. That feeling of crafting the plane and escaping to the bridge was equally as epic the first time I did it, and even now 11 years later, it simply does not get old. The story of these 4 characters is used to show the cycle the universe is stuck in, with the option to continue or break the cycle, and it becomes more relevant as the zombie story continued. Blundell's creative mind was on show for everyone to see here, from both his sandbox gameplay style and the story which he was clearly planning out from this point. Next, let's move on to the last map made by Jimmy Zielinski, Buried. Buried really is the ultimate homage to both Jimmy and the casual zombies map style that he created and expanded upon. The culmination of his ideas takes us to an underground western town, home to many innovative features. The largest of which is Leroy. Our giant friend can be found locked away, but if you free the poor fella, he will be your best friend. Give him booze and he'll open up new pathways, or give him sweets and he can hold the last zombie, or stomp down the mystery box so it doesn't move. Buried brings with it an extremely tight-knit and interconnected map design. So many pathways linked together in the main section of the map, my favourite of which being this parkour route you can take around the back of the map that allows you to turn on the power without spending any points. Also on this route, you may come across another new feature in the form of the chalk system. The chalk allows you to choose which weapon you want and where you want it, also giving the player 1000 points for using it. With those points, you might consider buying the new perk named Vulture, which is the most detailed perk in zombies, with countless small abilities that combine into one perk, such as creating a small amount of points and being able to see perks and items through walls. The mystery box is also home to the new wonder weapon, the Paralyzer, which has infinite ammo and can be used as a traversal device, as well as the Ray Gun Mark II, that will be added to all the previous maps. It's also home to other new weapons, such as the classic Remington revolver and the Time Bomb. This is all before you even think about Pack-a-Punching, but eventually you're going to want to do that. And to do that, you must pass through a place that still gives me shivers, the Witch's house. As you pass through, witches come out of nowhere to steal your points. But if you manage to make it through unscathed, a free perk is your reward. You also gain access to the maze, which changes every time you come here. And after you make it all the way through, you have access to the Pack-a-Punch, and in turn, have experienced one of my favourite setup processes in zombies. But this is a casual zombies map, so I recommend not training, but instead camping, and Buried has some great spots. Pack-a-Punch can be okay with a group, but the best spot is probably Jug for high rounds. Although this spot in the saloon is my personal favourite to set up in, with all the buildables that Buried has to offer. Buried is a top 5 zombies map, as it perfects the casual formula and can be enjoyed by casual players, but also hardcore players who know the ins and outs of this map. This is a great way for Jimmy Zielinski to pass on the torch to Blundell, as he left us with the ultimate culmination of his ideas. With Jimmy Zielinski stepping down, Blundell was now the main man, and well, he had something that would change the course of zombies forever. Both the gameplay and storyline of this mode would be set in motion for the next decade by one map: Origins. While subjectively we may all have our favourites, objectively, Origins is the greatest zombies map ever made. I can describe Origins as beautifully complex. It's a long setup process no matter what, requiring the whole map to be open to get all the generators on, making the decision on how you spend your points crucial. The looming threat of the Panzer Soldat appearing on round 8 creates a scramble to be ready, and that round in particular is really the filter between casual and serious zombie players. The Panzer is absolutely the hardest boss zombie up until that point, as he relentlessly chases the player and can grab them from afar with his claw. The lack of good training spots, mud that slows the player, and tight spaces make this guy a challenge to fight against, but a crucial learning curve to enter this new era for zombies. Past that point, and you're ready to explore Origins. I noted that Blundell made Mob feel like a sandbox, and it's the same here for Origins. It all revolves around the Wonder Weapon, or shall I say Wonder Weapons, as for the first time ever, we had not just 1, or 2, or even 3, but 4 Wonder Weapons. The elemental staffs, fire, ice, wind and lightning, allowed you to channel unbelievable power, but getting them wasn't so easy. Each must be crafted using different steps. Ice, for example, requires it to be snowing, as you must dig for the parts using the shovel system. Lightning requires you to go on the tank to grab all the parts. You then must get the gemstone from the crazy place, and that's just the beginning. After you do that, you can do another quest that upgrades your staff, involving lots of symbols and hunting around the map. As I said, this is complex and it isn't for everyone, but this added so much more replay value to the mode. In fact, speaking of complexity, and we have to talk about Origins' main shining light, the Easter egg. The zombies Easter egg has slowly been growing in complexity up to this point, but it peaks here. 8 steps that when broken down into parts are manageable, but as a total package, alongside all the other map elements that I've mentioned, make for a severe challenge, and one that only a small percentage, one of which is me, I'll throw that out there, will complete. Steps include building and upgrading all the staffs, fighting off an absurd amount of panzers, and finally, ascending from darkness and freeing Samantha. It's the Easter egg with the most room for improvement, and it's become a go-to for speedrunning, whilst the story it tells would subtly set up the premise storyline with a different set of the 4 iconic characters, this time with deeper stories that would be brought more to the forefront as the story progressed. I certainly wouldn't call Origins a casual friendly map, but it's the map that dawned a new era into zombies that maybe we didn't know we needed at the time. I've talked a lot about the golden era in this series so far, and I believe Origins began a new one for zombies. We wouldn't see that until later down the line, but on its own, Origins still stands tall as the best of the best. Black Ops 2 Zombies was certainly a rollercoaster, with very high highs, but some lows that have to be mentioned, especially when some are part of DLC packs that would cost extra money. But due to how much I love Mob, Buried and Origins, it manages to elevate Black Ops 2 Zombies slightly ahead of its predecessors, and I'd give it a strong 81 out of 100 score. The conversation around the best Call of Duty game usually stirs up a huge debate, but for me, I don't have to think twice about my answer. Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is the clear winner. 3 outstanding modes, including its innovative story partnered with a captivating villain, an epic, action-heavy multiplayer with a spectacular selection of maps, weapons, and other content to delve into, and a zombies mode that, while started off rough, ended with 3 maps that are easily some of the best and most groundbreaking in zombies history, laying the foundation for the Blundell era, which to many was a new golden era. So for that, and for ending the Call of Duty multiplayer golden era, in a special way, I can't think of any other score to give Black Ops 2 than 90 out of 100. I'm just glad I was able to experience this game in its prime, to be honest with you. It's a real shame that this game is dangerous to play online in 2024, with all the hackers running rampant. Which is why, as you may have noticed, all the multiplayer gameplay was against bots. Listen, I would have loved to have gone back and played the online again, and it definitely would have been more fun than fighting against Vonderhaar's bot for the 20th time in a row. But the hacking has got to the point where it's a risk to play. But to end on a high note, maybe one day we will see a remaster of Call of Duty Black Ops 2, and with 2025 just around the corner, and that game rumoured to be not too distant from BO2, I think next year we might be due for a trip down memory lane. But I've been Ranger, and this has been why Call of Duty Black Ops 2 is simply the best Call of Duty game ever made.